Okay, so it's Ruth Hattigan again. Here we are again with our second live broadcast of our 24-hour online joint book launch. It's great to see the comments that people have been making on the Facebook page. It really is wonderful. So thank you to everybody who's commented so far. Thank you to Claire and Lisa and Barry. Let's see who else is here. Okay, so Deborah. Um, some people are having technical issues, so everybody's comments are not showing up. It would be really great if you are having technical issues to just hop over to the page, take a moment and let us know what your experience is so we can fix that for you, because we really want you to enjoy this experience, and there's so much potential here that you could get out of it between Anya and myself. So for this little segment, what we thought we'd do is that Anya would ask me some questions about my book, Soul Astrology, and then later we'll do another live broadcast and I'll ask Anya about her book. So here we go. Let's over to Anya.
Hi, everyone. And Ruth. First of all, the cover of your book, I think, is beautiful. It's beautiful. It's like electric. And can you give just a little distinction between astrology and soul astrology? I think sometimes people don't realize there's a variety. There's Vedic. So maybe we say a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. There are lots of different schools of astrology, and they're all very very similar and very different at the same time because they use different systems. So soul astrology is based on the work of Alice Bailey, and Alice Bailey was actually telepathic. It was a work that was communicated to her in the between the 1930s and 1949 by somebody who called himself the Tibetan, and he was actually the abbot of a monastery in Tibet at the time. It wasn't a channeled work as such, but it was an actual telepathic communication between the two. And at the time, if you know a little bit about the history of Tibet, there was a danger of the wisdom teachings, the ancient wisdom teachings, from being lost. Now, it doesn't say that in esoteric astrology, but that's my belief, why it was so urgent that he transmitted this information out to the West at that time. So it comes from a different foundation, I suppose, but it's the same foundation, but it's coming in a different way. And most, what we talk of as astrology, that most Westerners will be familiar with, Western astrology, it uses the same foundation, but with soul astrology, it's like we bring in the additional piece. So most Western astrology would focus on the astrology of the personality, and soul astrology focuses on not only your personality, but also your soul. And it's very important that in soul astrology, your rising sign is taken to indicate your soul and your soul's essence, and that your personality is not who you really are. It's conditioned, it's learned behavior. And that's important because sometimes we can get fixated on, I'm a Gemini, or, you know, I'm a Cancer, or I'm a Scorpio, and we think that's who we are. And so what we're saying in soul astrology is no, the essence of who you are is indicated by your rising sign, and that's your soul. And our whole journey of spiritual awakening for all of us, our spiritual path, is one of personality soul fusion. So we're actually integrating the personality and the soul.
Right, beautiful, easy to understand that. And if people are wondering, thus, this is a part of the whole picture, thus the joint venture, because very much, Ruth, our books kind of have something to do with each other. And so I encourage people to buy both books. That's one of the reasons I'm also putting my book on half price until Monday, I think it is, at 7 o'clock. And because both really complicate. Did you hear Freudian slip? Complicate. Because it's complicated. Astrology is complicated, and it takes someone to be able to interpret that, which you do so beautifully. So maybe say a bit, Ruth, how the books complement each other.
Well, astrology can be very complicated, and one of
Mm.
my goals, especially esoteric astrology, it's some people start to read Alice Bailey's work and they just cannot get through it. So one of my roles in this lifetime is to simplify that.
Yeah.
To take complex things and simplify them. So that's what I've tried to do in the book. I mean, really, if you know your rising sign and your sun and your moon, you know a lot of information about yourself. Your sun being how you flow your pranic energy, and your moon is your emotional energy. And then, of
Right.
course, your rising sign is your soul's energy. And so where you and I come together is because for people who don't know, who are not familiar with my work, Anya is my mentor and has been I hired Anya as my coach many, many years ago. And I mentioned Anya in the acknowledgements right at the front of the book because she has been vital in helping me to develop the language to describe the new astrology, if you like, the future astrology,
Right. Right.
because astrology is essentially a language to describe energy and how we experience energy. Well, Anya, that's your work, that's your life's work. And so the Tibetan in esoteric astrology says that all astrologers of the future will be intuitive. And so the way that we develop our intuition is through the heart opening and
Mm.
through experiencing clear mind and a quiet mind. Now, right at the outset in soul astrology, I say that a really important part of soul astrology is not just the study of the astrology itself and learning the astrological language, but actually developing yourself so that you develop the capacity for
Yes.
higher perception. And
Yes.
that's where your work comes in. And your
Yeah.
book, which of course I was fortunate enough to read because I edited it and published it. And so in the editing, I was really fortunate to read Anya's book, and I've been familiar with Anya's work for such a long time. There's nobody better to support you in developing yourself to the point where you can increase your capacity for intuition and higher perception. And you're more qualified than I am to talk about that.
Yeah.
And yet that's an essential foundation for soul astrology.
Yeah. You're using a very important word, Ruth, capacity. Can you say a bit about that?
Well, it's our ability to do something. I remember listening to Namkhai Norbu Rinpoche, one of the great Tibetan teachers, Namkhai Norbu Rinpoche,
Yeah.
and he was giving a talk about no matter how much compassion we have, no matter how great a light worker we are, with all respect, and how much heart-centered compassion we
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
and how willing we are to help, all of that means nothing if we don't have the capacity to do something. And he gave the example of somebody who's just been knocked over in the street, and he said they need a doctor. You can run up to them and hug them and love them all you like, but at the end of the day, the guy needs a doctor or the woman needs a doctor. And he was speaking to something that we don't often recognize in the West, and that is spiritual capacity. And there is
Yes.
such a thing called spiritual capacity, where we actually develop ourselves to the point where our whole energy field makes a difference by who we be, by how we walk through the world. And I feel like I'm talking about your book now, because this is coming right out of
Right.
your book, and this is exactly what you talk about, is how to be in ourselves, in our beingness. How we be affects how we're flowing our energy. And so these are your words. I feel like it's you talking now,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
this is exactly how the books flow together.
Yes.
Because we have to be at that level of capacity, and we have to be at that level of self-awareness to really deeply understand our astrology from a soul astrology perspective. And so in my book, it sounds as though I just talk so much about polarities and so much about opposites. And that's because we are in a world of duality. We're in a world that sees everything in terms of opposites, that sees everything as black and white. And when it's part of this integration process of personality soul fusion is that we are resolving duality, and
Yes.
we're moving towards oneness,
Yes.
towards unity consciousness, which you speak about in your book. And in that process, we're all going through an integration process. So there's lots in the book about what the Tibetan calls the six opposites, the opposite signs, six opposite signs of the zodiac, and
Yeah.
how we actually integrate. And I talk about the higher and the lower octaves of each sign. So if, for example, if you're carrying the qualities of Cancer, I know you have Cancer Sun, I have Cancer Rising.
Mm-hmm.
Cancer brings with it, it's about being very specific and precise in talking about the language of the energy, which you have helped me with enormously, because Anya, folks, is exquisite because of her great capacity for perception, and she has been so brilliant at perceiving energy for her whole life, and is exquisite in pinning down the language. No, it's not quite like that. It's more like this. And so on. Thank you. You've been fantastic to help me with the language. But back to this example. What do I mean by somebody could be more personality and worldly oriented, and
Right.
another person could be more further along the path of spiritual awakening, if you like, more conscious, more further down that path. And so the difference, you would still both be carrying the energy, the energetic quality of Cancer, but because underneath that, it's the urge to nurture. It's about nurturing and
Yes.
this urge towards nurturing. But somebody who's just a very worldly, ordinary, not particularly spiritually inclined, ordinary everyday person who's got these Cancerian traits, it might come about more as just an urge to nurture your family, to cook and nourish the people around you. Buy your friend a cake or bake her a birthday cake or something like that. It might manifest in that way. Whereas if it's somebody's coming more from a consciousness perspective, they're more awake in their consciousness, then it would come out more as spiritual nurturing. And to be able to nurture somebody spiritually, it takes capacity again. You have to be able to emanate the energy, the actual energy of compassion. Not just think about ideas, not just have compassionate thoughts, but to actually, from the heart, as you do so well, flow this energy of compassion. And that's a great spiritual capacity that some of the highest spiritual teachers carry. I think of the Dalai Lama, who's got also Cancer rising and Sun in Cancer. So that's what I mean about capacity. It's actually about having some ability, some really strong spiritual power, if you like. I don't mean like magical powers. I mean, some real essence.
Yeah, I think that's a well done, Ruth. A really, really important point for people to get. Spiritual capacity. It's way more than lip service. It's a field of energy. And have you ever walked up to a person and you, all of a sudden, your heart, you can just feel like a warmth, or oh wow, you almost can feel the love right there. That's what I'm referring to.
Well, I'm aspiring to that, Anya. I smile when I hear you say that, because I know this is your life. And here I am in my 50s, and I've had that experience one time. I can tell you I've had that experience one time, because for me and many people like me who've spent a long life inside my own head, I wasn't aware of feelings for a long time. And I can only aspire to feel the subtle distinctions in feelings that I know you experience. And that's part of the path. Very much I went through the education system here in the UK where, if you read a book, you think you know something, but I didn't realize that that's only the mental level. And that's only the beginning. And one thing I've learned from soul astrology is that, we get something, and you teach this as well, we get something at 3 levels. Initially something just comes in at the mental level as as an idea, oh, something you've never heard of before.
Mhm.
You receive it initially at the mental level, but then next it has to be integrated at the emotional level, and then after that it's the physical level and it's the embodiment. And what's so beautiful, I'm going to say this because I don't think I've ever said it before publicly, but I'm just remembering now. I have taken a lot of Buddhist teachings, which people will know if they've read my newsletter and they've read the book and read my articles. I'm always referring to Buddhism and Buddhist teachings. I've sat through a lot of Buddhist teachings that I started since about 2006. But prior to that, I've been working with you since about 2002.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a great analogy, this idea about the information coming in at the mental, the intellectual level, and then the emotional level, and then being grounded in at the physical level.
Yes.
What's so interesting to me is that same, you teach that through the working with you and the work that you do, and the Buddhist teachings say the same thing. And in esoteric astrology, what the Tibetan says is very similar as well. That was one, when I first started studying esoteric astrology, that was one of the things that I really wanted to look for validation, because I thought, okay, let's just take this at face value. Here's someone who's calling himself a Tibetan, who's supposed to be an abbot of a Tibetan monastery. Well, he would know Tibetan Buddhism, wouldn't he? He would know the Tibetan teachings. So that's also one of the reasons why I went into studying Tibetan Buddhism in particular, not just any old Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, to see if there is some core truth in the teachings, and that's, that can be cross-referenced between esoteric astrology and Tibetan Buddhism, and there definitely is. And it's also what you teach, but it's not the everyday Buddhism. You have to get to the highest, the Mahamudra and Dzogchen. I know people aren't familiar with these terms, but some listeners may be. That's the level of Tibetan Buddhism that starts to become analogous and make sense of esoteric astrology. And some of the simple, as I said in the foreword that I wrote for your book, some of the simple truths that you talk about, they sound almost paradoxical or Zen-like to people. I remember when I first started to work with you thinking, what is she saying? She says one thing and then it seems the opposite, and it kind of messes with your head a little bit. But that has to happen. That has to happen on the spiritual path, so that we release limiting beliefs and convictions that are in the way of us experiencing spiritual truth.
Yeah. Fascinating, fascinating, fascinating. And many ladders, as I say, many ladders lead to the same roof. And we're all on a different rung of those ladders. And that's true in all of the religions. There's a core truth that goes right across the entire spectrum. Yeah. The title of your book, the subtitle of your book, and I'm going to read it so I get it right. How your rising sign reveals your soul path and life purpose. Soul path. Can you say a bit about that, Ruth? Soul path.
One of the most exciting things for me about soul astrology is this idea that our soul is actually going through developmental stages.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have to be careful as human beings talking about stages, because the human mind hears that and wants to put things into boxes and starts to think in terms of compartments.
Right.
If you think of a rose growing and developing, for simplicity, we can talk about stages, can't we? We can say, well, there's a bud, and then the bud starts to open, and then it blooms. But in nature, there are no distinctions between these stages. It's just a smooth flow from one into the other.
Right.
Now, in the book, in Esoteric Astrology, Alice Bailey, the Tibetan through Alice Bailey, says the soul is on a journey that begins in Pisces as a point of light in the mind of God, and then culminates in Pisces with the sacred heart opening of
Yeah.
humanity.
Yeah.
It's and when we study the 12 stages, developmental stages that are indicated by the zodiac signs, it's a fantastic journey. Now, I believe, and it doesn't say this in esoteric astrology, this is just my conclusion from listening to some of the higher Buddhist teachings and studying esoteric astrology. I believe what the Tibetan was describing in these 12 developmental stages was the formation of a light body or a rainbow body.
Right.
That might be another book, a more advanced book later down the pike. But for now, that's just kind of an idea that I'm having, and I haven't gone any deeper with that because, quite honestly, I don't have the spiritual capacity. I don't have a rainbow body. I don't have a light body. And we can't know from an intellectual level, we can't know what our soul is. I remember when you were coaching me, one of the questions you asked me was, how do you know what you know? And
I remember asking you.
It stopped me in my tracks. It stopped me in my tracks. Alfred, I always get an itchy nose when we're live. Why do I get an itchy nose when we're live? It stopped me in my tracks because that was the day that I realized that I knew nothing. And when I say I knew nothing, for listeners, I had been through the education system. I was already a nurse. I was already a midwife. I had already done an advanced diploma in midwifery. I'd already done a bachelor's degree. I've got more letters. The piece of paper isn't long enough for the letters that I could put after my name, but I don't, because that was the day that I realized I know nothing.
Stamp.
I knew nothing other than hearsay. If you pick up my book and read it from cover to cover, you're not going to know anything more than you know now.
Right.
It's all hearsay. It's all just words. Until you have the spiritual experience for yourself. That's why it's experience, it's experiential learning that matters. It's the experiences that you're having and the understanding that you're getting as a result of your experiences. If you haven't experienced it, we collect information that we believe to be truth in our head. We walk around going, oh yeah, the world's round, yes, it's a globe, and oh, those stupid people in medieval times who thought the world was flat, ha ha ha. Well, how do you know it's round? Have you seen a picture on the TV? How do you know that wasn't a mock-up? How do you know it was real? I don't know the world is round. And it could be flat for all I know. So that was a really profound day when you stopped me in my tracks by asking, how do you know what you know? And so one of the beautiful things, I know we're supposed to be talking about soul astrology, but I keep referring back to your book. We haven't got to that bit.
It's the same book, the two together.
Well, this is why you have to just get these two books together because they are companion books. They go hand in hand. So perhaps when we're supposed to be talking about Anya's book, we'll talk about soul astrology. But in Anya's book, you really do. And I don't think people know this about you because you can look at a book and go, oh yeah, light workers, okay. But it's really experiential. It's really practical. In your book, you're telling people what they really need to do to have this experience of themselves as spiritual beings. And in my book, I'm saying, okay, so you've got this gorgeous spiritual essence, say you're a beautiful Virgo soul and you're here to flow divine love into the world. But what you've got in the way of that, that beautiful essence, that beautiful energy is getting filtered down through a human mind. And that human mind is in the nature of your sun and your moon signs. And that's your obstacle. That's what's in your way. And in your book, Anya, you tell people the practical, experiential things they can do to clear those obstacles and have a real experience of themselves as spiritual beings. And when you have that real experience for yourself, that's when you know.
Totally. Yeah, beautifully said. You've been to some of the workshops, Ruth, and have seen firsthand the look on people's faces, when I facilitate a workshop and all of a sudden their face just, you can see that they've shifted dimension. and then they'll see me. Some people see me as an angel, or why are all the lights brighter? Why is everything so crisper? Right? That's because what's been in the way dissipated, and they can see. Yeah, it's exciting. It's really exciting. I look forward to all that's coming as a result of this. You know, the workshops and webinars and all the things we'll be doing. I'm very excited about that. So with the subtitle, Ruth, Soul Purpose. It's kind of, you almost have to get out of your head for a moment, get into your heart and feel, what might that mean to the individual? Soul purpose. Are you saying, I have a purpose? Are you saying, who I am as a soul is using me to, I could ask a million questions. Of course, I know the answers, but I'm asking it this way so people can hear what's in the book.
Well, in the subtitle, it actually says life purpose, soul path and life purpose.
Yeah.
And but you could say soul purpose. And here's where the Zen comes in and the paradox comes in. Because on the one hand, the soul has no purpose. Not in the sense that a personality would think that we've got my job is, I'm an accountant, and so my purpose is to go and, do the books and what have you. No, not in that sense. The soul doesn't have a purpose, but the soul does have one purpose and one purpose alone, and that is to integrate personality and soul, is to become and be unity consciousness, what you would call unity consciousness.
Yes.
But do we have a life purpose? Now that relates to your personality signs. So if I could use you for an example.
Sure.
Okay, so Anya's a Libra soul, so it's going to be the bane of the day. So Anya's a Libra soul, and so the Libra soul's here to bring greater degrees of harmony and balance to the planet, and she has Sun in Cancer and Moon in Aries, so she's a Libra soul with a Cancer Aries personality. Now, for somebody who's mundane, ordinary, we've already said the Cancer could be very nurturing, very motherly, not with so much an Aries moon. Somebody like that could just be a bit of a stay-at-home, not go out much, just be a mother, take care of the family. However, your Aries moon is always going to want to get out and about and be quite, not so much career-oriented, but Aries wants to get out and make a way in the world, do something out in the world.
Yep.
So there's the basic personality, but you've got this beautiful Libra soul who wants to come in and bring greater degrees of harmony and balance. Now, on an ordinary level, you could just do that. On a personality level, you could just do that within the family. But on a soul level, you're wanting to elevate that. Like the octaves on a musical scale. The more you raise your vibration, the more you clear the personality, there's a kind of higher and lower personality expressions. So one of the problems with Cancer is that they can become very stuck in some ways, very limited, just like stay at home, just stay with their own family, not really go out, not really explore much. And with Aries, the problem with Aries is that there can be a great emphasis on just not so much me, but my career, my goals, what I need to do. There can be almost a self-orientation with Aries that's the opposite of Libra. Now, once you start to recognize how the personality manifests through more self-awareness, when you recognize how the personality manifests, you can let those personality obstacles fall away and express the higher expression, the higher octaves of those signs. So then you would have the higher Aries purpose, if you like, for want of a better word, which is to inspire people with divine ideas. And then the higher purpose of Cancer, which is to bring people spiritual nourishment
Yeah.
So then once you've got the personality obstacles out of the way, the higher soul purpose of Libra, you can bring those higher degrees of harmony and balance into the planet by spiritually nourishing people, which is the higher octave of Cancer, and by inspiring people with divine ideas, which is the higher octave of Aries. So that's what we're all doing. We're all on our soul path, wherever our soul is on that journey around the circle from Aries to Pisces. Our soul is at some stage in development, and at the same time, our life purpose is to clear away the personality obstacles of our personality signs, mainly our sun and our moon sign, so we can express the highest expression, the highest purpose of those signs, because that is then the lens through which our soul can bring the soul light into this world.
Right. Yes, and in that it, is also working through the emotional body.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So and that's kind of the end of the spectrum, and then it goes to the capacity piece. Being able to have the energy field, the clarity to be able to work. So if I'm on purpose in all levels, and I'm here to balance, so you can imagine what I bring into my space, so to speak, what's out of balance.
Exactly.
In people, yes. Places, and situations, because it's going to come right up. Whatever's off is going to come right up because it's coming up for balancing. And that can even be just an energetic piece without a word said.
Yes, it can. And that's a great point, without a word said, because when you've got great capacity, it can happen on an energetic level. Yeah. And so you're speaking for all Libra souls there, people with Libra rising especially, but to a degree as well, people with sun and moon in Libra. If you're here to bring harmony, are you always going to be in harmonious situations? Well, there'd be no point.
That's the
There'd
point.
Be no point. You have to be in this harmony in order to bring that.
I think of how many people, and you know about these situations, Ruth, it's complete and total strangers to me, and we just start talking and they start crying, and they're like, I don't know why I'm starting to cry, and it's because of that. And in this case, crying is a really good thing, because the emotional body feels safe enough to start to release through the chemicals of emotion called tears, and tears will just stream because their body's going, it's safe to let go now. It's safe to let go. It's fascinating. I mean, both our worlds are fascinating. Yeah. So being on this end of it and doing a dual launch.
I know, and somebody, I'm sorry, I forget your name in this moment, somebody on the Facebook did say that it was a great idea to do this dual launch, but trying to navigate the Facebook page, I couldn't find the comment to read it out loud.
Yeah, it's, and it was really good, Ruth, the way you explained how can these two people and their books, why are they so complementary? That was beautiful to hear you talk about that.
That's right, Lisa. On Facebook, Lisa says, congratulations both on this great performance happening as a duo, celebrating your creativity. And yes, I mean, it is great to celebrate creativity, but it is more, as we've said. You can see now, hopefully after this broadcast, you can see how really complementary it is. If you're a soul astrologer, if you're interested in soul astrology, and you are interested in going deeper in your path of self-exploration to really, really experience for yourself who you are as a spiritual being, then guess what? You're also a light worker, so you need Anya's book. Anya's book actually is the map, if you like. It's the guide on the path.
Yeah, pulling things into practical tips, tools, and techniques, so you can begin living and have the capacity to live the soul and personality fusion, where you actually you become your purpose. You become your purpose. And then the natural thing beyond that is you start working with people to be more on purpose, bringing the being to the doing, as I say.
That's a great expression. That is a great expression. If you want to know what it means, you need to buy a book. It's fantastic. It's called Lightworker Undercover by an author called Anya Sophia Mann. Just go to lightworkerundercover.com, because bringing the being to the doing is a fantastic expression, and Anya goes into great depth actually on what that means and how we do become that.
Yeah. So many of us are just en route, just like being on the hamster wheel. When the spiritual aspect, the soul of who we are is not in the work. And so that's when it begins to feel just monotony. So, curious about something, Ruth. Pass is an option. If you had the opportunity to retitle your book, would you? And you may not. I'm just curious in hindsight.
Actually, I wouldn't. I actually wouldn't. I didn't have a title. For a long time, I didn't have a title. I was just a book about soul astrology. So, of course, it just became soul astrology. And then when I sat back and thought, okay, what am I really saying in this book? I'm talking about how your rising sign is revealing your soul's path and your life purpose, because that's what it's doing. When you know your ascendant, you really know what your essence is here to do, and
Right.
the how you will do it happens through your personality signs.
Yeah.
The moon sign.
Yeah. In your progression of your studies of esoteric astrology, it was wonderful for me to hear you speak about me from a science standpoint, Ruth, because astrology is a science. And so to hear you tell me about me through the science door was fascinating, because it made total sense of why I have the sensitivity to subtle energies and why I'm in certain situations. And, of course, I'm here to balance what's out of balance. So, of course, you're going to attract a lot of shadow stuff in. Yeah, so it was awesome to hear the science of how my life is.
That's one of the most beautiful things for me. The number, I can't tell you the number of people when they first hear what their soul sign is and what their soul purpose is. Even if they've just read on my website, ruthhadikin.com, there's a blog post, your rising sign is your soul's purpose.
Yes.
Whether they just read that little blog, or whether they watched one of the videos, the YouTube videos that's on your YouTube channel about all the different signs. And we'll put some of those up here on this book launch page. We'll put some of these up here later tonight. Or whether they've had a reading from me, so whether they've spoke to me in person, or they've just read that little blog, or whether they've watched a video, there's immediate recognition.
Yes.
And that's one of the major themes of your book, is when we recognize our light. So you talk in your book to great length about the importance of recognizing your light. And when people hear about the rising sign is symbolic of what stage of development their soul is at, that's quite often a point of recognition for them. They're moved to tears, very often moved to tears.
Yes.
The power and the significance of that.
Yes. And it's true, when you do recognize and connect to that light that is you, you walk through the world. I got to go with the word that's coming, exonerated.
Aha.
So now you have to tell me what the word means, Ruth.
Exonerated means that you have been, if I can, I wish I had the words. Somebody's exonerated. The way I understand it, it means something has been lifted from you. It's almost like
Yes.
you were accused of something. Say you were accused of stealing something, and then you didn't steal it, and you had to go through all of the to prove you were innocent, and then it finally comes to court, and the judge says you are exonerated. It is
Yes.
publicly acknowledged that you never did it in the first place. So something that was laid on you has been lifted,
Yes. Yes.
exonerated. And I
Yes.
think when in the context of which you speak, feeling exonerated, that's true, because all of the cultural conditioning and labeling and everything that's untrue that's laid on you about who you are, you're told you're like this, you're told you're like that, and we end up trying to live a lie. We end up trying to make things that are false true and then live up to them. And when we actually, in that moment of recognition, of touching the truth of who you really are, there is an exoneration. Everything that you're not falls away.
You read the book.
I read your book. Yes. Yeah. This could possibly be the longest broadcast we've done. Did we say this was going to be 10 minutes?
So maybe we leave it here.
I think for now, yes,
For
so
now.
that we can come back and then we'll really talk about your book when we come back.
Yeah. Buy the book. Buy the book.
Absolutely, both books. They come as
Family,
a
friends, co-workers. Yeah.
So to buy Anya's book, it's lightworkerundercover.com. And to grab a hold of a copy of Soul Astrology, it's soulastrologybook.com. Okay, so we'll end it there for now, and we'll be back later on. Stay tuned to talk more about Anya's book. See you then.